later on, I was asked by my political party to also contribute as a contestant and a candidate to the European Parliament elections back in 2019. And thanks to the trust of the electorate and my great support system, I managed to be elected as the first Godzitan to ever represent the country in the European Parliament, and also as the youngest one so far. I've gone into politics because I looked at politics as a tool to bring about positive change in areas I care about, and once I became elected.
You are listening to the Social Hotelier Show, a podcast that inspires hoteliers to create meaningful and memorable experiences for their customers in pursuit of their passion. We share our views and experiences relating to hospitality, technological trends, and also relating to humanity. Here is your host, Sam-Erik Rutman.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Hotelier podcast with me, Sam-Erik Rutman. In this episode today, I have a very special guest, no other than Josianne Cutajar. She has been someone I've been always looking forward to have a discussion with, partly because that she's been very influential in the European Parliament as a representative of Malta, and just saying that when somebody is representing her country in the European Parliament says something about what kind of influence she has had on many things. And she became the active member of Transport and Tourism Committee and working on digital legislation. She didn't stop there. She also joined the Tourism Task Force. With her background from her island of Gozo, which is a booming tourism industry, gives her a unique insight into the sector challenges and opportunities. She's all about the high quality, improving connectivity and helping small businesses thrive in the digital and environmental landscape. She became the main negotiator at the Tourism Committee stance on the short-term rentals regulation. In this role, she championed a balanced ecosystem and benefits hosts, tourists, and legal communities alike. So, warm welcome, Josianne. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much to you. It's a pleasure being here. We've been mentioning to do this discussion for some time, but here we are, and I look forward to a very fruitful one indeed.
Thank you. So, first of all, for our audience to get some background, can you share about your professional drive and ambition that resulted you to become the representative of Malta in European Parliament early in your professional career?
Yes, thank you for that question. I am a lawyer by profession, but I've been involved in politics since my student days. So when I was still studying law at the university, at the age of 22, I contested and I was elected as back then the youngest female in the local councils. Luckily, later on, we even had younger representatives in our villages. And I spent 7 years of doing local politics in my village of Nadur as an elected representative. Later on, I was asked by my political party to also contribute as a contestant and a candidate to the European Parliament elections back in 2019. And thanks to the trust of the electorate and my great support system, I managed to be elected as the first Godzitan to ever represent the country in the European Parliament, and also as the youngest one so far. I've gone into politics because I looked at politics as a tool to bring about positive change in areas I care about. And once I became elected, I pushed forward to become a member of one of the most important committees for even island member states like Malta, which is transport and tourism. The tourism industry is very important for our country, as it is for Gozo, the smaller island within our archipelago where I come from. And connectivity and transport is definitely key, also not only for our islands, but for all Europeans, because connectivity and transport also means enabling the free movement of persons, services, goods. And in this regard, it's a very important enabler.
Very good. Now, for the uniqueness of Gozo, I have had the pleasure of visiting Gozo, and unfortunately only once. So it's not really. I have no qualifications except saying that it was one of the most beautiful days I spent through my whole visit in that region, and I enjoyed so much. But I also understand there's so many things that what makes Gozo special. Top reasons to visit would be maybe the nature, history, unbelievable, and then the culinary. So could you share a little bit about and what are the things one could expect for visiting who maybe is a history buff or enjoy good food and enjoy walking in the nature?
All of them together, I must say. Indeed. And let me give a few examples of what to expect in the island of Gozo. First of all, you can get from one point to another in maximum 30 minutes. And you can easily go beach hopping around the island. And that's something I really enjoy, especially, for example, when the wind is particularly affecting one bay. I can easily hop to another beach, easily park and go to swim. And there are a variety of beaches. For those who love sandy beaches, we have the renowned Ramla El Hamra Bay, which is made up of red sand. And it's a beautiful bay which a lot of tourists visit. It's one of my favorite beaches because it's very close to the village of Nadur, where I am resident in. And then there are also other quaint and smaller beaches like San Blas Bay, where there is a bit of a steep hill to go up, especially because on the way down it's easier. And however, it's very small, but it's a very cute bay to visit. And it's surrounded by beautiful valleys too. And then there are more rocky beaches, and that's something also beautiful to visit. There's a lot of history on the islands. There are a lot of towers which were used back then as part of the defense system, even during the Knights of St. John era. But there's also, for example, other historical landmarks like the Cittadella, which is the fortified city of Gozo, and we were attacked also by Turks in the past. The people of Gozo used to go there as protection within the citadel walls, within the fortifications. Nowadays, it has been restored via EU funds, and it's a beautiful location to visit. It has a lot of museums there, and the old courtroom. The courtrooms are still there in Gozo, but there's also the old prison one could visit, and beautiful views of the island from the citadel. Then I must mention Gigantia temples. Gigantia temples are old temples from the prehistoric era, and they are also kept in a well-restored condition, and they are very interesting to visit, to look back onto the earlier historic period of Gozo. It's very interesting. Then you can visit also the different villages where there are very nice churches, but also nice restaurants to visit, both in coastal areas, but also in the villages where there are also some pubs. One could visit cafeterias. It's very interesting, and I really would like you to come over again. I could easily tour you around myself because I love history and culture a lot, and I know all the areas of the island. But there's also a lot of tours one could embark upon with guided professionals and guides who could also explain the history and other aspects of our island. And this food, I must mention the Maltese jbeina, which is traditional also cheese, and which is very famous in Gozo, and the ftira. Ftira in the Maltese language, they also refer to a type of bread, which we also have very delicious bread in the Maltese Islands. But in Gozo, when we refer to the ftira, there are two traditional bakeries with very old ovens in my village of Nadur. In Atta. In Atta. Madonna.
I see you and I hear you.
Okay. But from my side, there was this pop-up.
I see. Well,
All right, I'll go. Can I go again on the food so
yeah.
we don't
I
record the whole
will.
thing again?
I will edit it later on, so no
Yes.
problem.
So when it comes to food, I must definitely mention what is called the Jbeina Maltese, which is the cheese which Gozo is known for, and also the ftira. Ftira in Maltese on the main island, it's more referred to the traditional bread. We have very good Maltese bread on the islands too, generally. But we in Gozo, we also have this traditional pizza, which is called daftira. We have two bakeries, very famous, also within my village of Nadur, where they have very old ovens, and they cook this traditional pizza. It's dough with potatoes, sliced potatoes, tomatoes, and also olives, onions. They could put tuna on it, but they also do it with the traditional cheese, and this is very delicious, I must say.
Well, the way you describe it, it's so delicious. I couldn't wait to give it a try when I come and visit you one day in Gozo. So, well, that's a very good introduction, and I'm also a history buff, so I love the nature and enjoy good food. So I think Gozo really fits tick all the boxes of what I would like to do when I go with my wife on a holiday. So definitely, Gozo is on, and I recommend anyone to make a special visit. It's not only about Malta, the island of Malta, but just a hop by water or by boat, and you end up in Gozo, and it's a very. In fact, what I liked, it was very peaceful there, and that's what I remember more than anything. I'm used to be in Finland. We respect nature, we respect sort of the quietness, and I felt at home by being Gozo for those reasons also.
Great. Great to hear. Hope to have you back soon.
Yes. So, of course, we are concerned about the coastal tourism and marine conservation, and really the importance of finding the right balance. And being from Gozo, could you speak about your passion for the blue economy and touch on some topics that are very important to you? And what does it mean to you and the role of coastal and marine tourism in Gozo?
Yes, definitely. The blue economy, marine tourism, coastal tourism is key. And I really believe that as islands and an island member state, and for those who are listening in and coming from coastal areas, even our coastal areas, our regions near rivers, they all need to step up when it comes to utilizing the great potential that there is in the blue economy. We listen a lot about the green economy and the Green Deal. I would like to see a blue deal too within the European Union, because I really believe that we need to pay attention more when it comes to our seas, our rivers, and our coastal areas. And definitely there's a huge load of potential there. There are already a lot of EU funds, like invest in when it comes to the blue economy and investing. There are EU funds available to help us even when it comes to opportunities emanating from our oceans. And I'd like our businesses and our communities and our governments and our authorities to tap a lot more into these funds, because I worked a lot with SMEs during this mandate, and we found that a lot of SMEs didn't even know about the opportunities that there exist when it comes to these funding opportunities. So this is an important aspect. And speaking of Gozo again as an example, Gozo is also known for diving. A lot of persons from around the European Union and even abroad come and visit us for diving purposes. For example, Dueira in Gozo is very famous when it comes to diving, and there are interesting spots around other areas. Deep diving, we also had recently a site which was inaugurated when it comes to deep diving, where there are shipwrecks and also some other aspects which are very interesting to our divers. And that's why, for example, when we speak of the blue aspect, when we speak of marine conservation, it's important not only for the health of our seas and oceans and for the ecosystem, the natural ecosystem, but it's also important for tourism itself. Because if we do not protect our seas, our oceans, Gozo, which is known for diving, one day will not be known for diving anymore. So this is a perfect example where the eco aspect, where the environmental aspect comes along well with the economic aspect. And I really believe, and I really like to emphasize, that when we speak of sustainability, let's look at the various facets, and not as one against the other, but how can we develop economic models which are sustainable, which leave and mitigate the negative impact on the environment, but also bring about positive economic models which are competitive, which attract tourists, and which also leave a positive aspect on the social aspect, on our local communities, which could really also benefit from these types of tourism.
Yeah, that's well said. I'm really, I'm always interested in what can be done in terms of sustainability, but now I look at regenerative tourism and what more can be done in order to make the place better. I think one of the things which I'm interested to get your comment and how can visitors support the community with their actions so it becomes like a regenerative tourism, not only that they take something away from it or while during their visit, but do something of value. Is it the monetary, or is it through their action, or any other things that may be of interest that you think could be considered?
So, first of all, I really urge and I really support personally when I go to visit some region, some country or another, I always look at the local artisan made products. And also, I try and go to local restaurants, family-run businesses, which reflect the more authentic aspects and, in my opinion, enhance better the tourist experience, but also support the local communities. And I really believe that this is very much important. And in this regard, I love also these artisan villages. And in Gozo, we also have Tadbeji, for example, and even in Malta, we have an artisan village where you can find a lot of craft shops and nice souvenirs which are locally made and reflect also the traditions, for example, made from stone, but also from the betzilla, which is also the lace, takes a lot of patience when it is done. And when it's handmade, it takes a lot of hours and a lot of patience, but it's beautiful and it reflects also the local traditions. But I really believe also in the importance of responsible tourism. So let me speak as myself as a tourist. When I go and visit a locality, a region, I always make sure that I do not leave, starting from the basics, any litter behind. And if there's some litter which I can remove personally, I do it too. And here I wanted to link a bit when it comes to legislation and policies at local level too. This is very much important. So local authorities must look into how to encourage and sustain the local communities, also when it comes to minimizing nuisance, when it comes to the local communities not being negatively impacted by mass tourism, for example, or by irresponsible tourism. And here I wanted to refer to the short-term rentals regulation that I contributed towards as the rapporteur for the Committee on Transport and Tourism, where we also gave an opinion reflecting the importance of this sector towards tourism. It's essential that local authorities have the data in hand, and it's essential that hosts provide this data and also platforms facilitated. With this data, we can then do better policy making which is informed not policy making, which is not informed by the actual data. And this could lead, I believe, towards a better experience also to the local communities in areas where there are short-term lets, but also other types of accommodation which might not be traditional, like hotels, and in areas where tourism is concentrated. This is very much important. I believe a lot in data, and I really believe that through policy making, which is driven by data, we can also enhance the experience not only of tourists themselves as consumers and customers, but also at the end of the day of the environment, historical and natural, but also of the local communities themselves.
Very good. Now, in Gozo, is it mostly the kind of tourism, and there are of course hotels, but is there what we call what you mentioned short-term rentals? Are they individual homes or individual villas that people book for their holiday, or how? What is kind of the main drive of vacations in Gozo?
Yes, we do have good hotels there, but we also have the alternative option of short lets via platforms or the well-renowned platforms, but other smaller platforms which are being developed even locally, which offer these short lets for rentals in different parts of the island and also in the different villages. But I'd like to mention also the boutique hotels, which have been on the increase in the last years in Gozo. We have very beautiful and quaint boutique hotels too, as an alternative experience to hotels and other short lets, and ones which also reflect the character of Gozo and Gozo as an island of villages. Recently, the Gozo Regional Development Authority, which has been set up by the Labour government recently, which is an authority targeted to look more at looking at the Gozitan aspect, the Gozitan reality, the island's potential, the risks if we do not develop a policy specific for islands, which calls upon Gozo as an island of villages. So it does not only distinguish the island of Gozo separate from the main island of Malta, because Gozo has its challenges like double insularities, but also its unique aspects which make it a unique destination. For example, in Gozo, we still have the green belts in between one village and another. When you are driving, you still experience a stretch of fields of nature, which is really pleasant. So it also goes a step further into looking at the specificities of the different villages, because one village is different from the other. They might have similar characteristics, and they do have, but its village is unique. And I think this is really important because we should look at regions, at destinations as unique destinations. And I really believe that everywhere we go, we can find that unique historical landmark, that unique natural walk among the fields or among the coasts of that coastal region, which make it really unique. It's unique dialects, for example. Gozo has different dialects in its different villages. In my own village of Nadur, we have a very strong dialect. To give just a small example, in standard Maltese, we say bahar when we refer to the sea. But in not the Gozitan dialect, but in the dialect of my own village of Nadur in Gozo, we say instead of bahar, beher. So the A becomes an E. And the sound is different. And this is very beautiful. And I really love languages, but also dialects, and I really appreciate them. It's something which reflects also our unique villages and the way dialects were developed.
Well, I think this is really something that I'm now learning about Gozo. It's the island of villages, and really to appreciate a holiday is that you stay in a village and learn to appreciate the kind of the village life. And I think that's very, very interesting. And I think that's because people are looking for, there's cliche about unique experience, but actually when you are combining a holiday or a vacation where you are going to stay in a village, that is it's an experience you cannot get in any other village because it's so unique. Language is one thing, of course, but there's other small things that will separate your holiday from one village to another. So that's a very nice thing, and I did not know about that. And I think that's something that the listeners will appreciate also, because they are always looking for, well, what's the next place to visit in the holiday. So that will be very, very useful information. So thank you, Josianne, for that.
And I definitely always recommend ask a local.
Yes, that's right.
So everywhere I go, even if I look up before some places of interest and some reviews, I always love speaking to the locals wherever I can communicate in the language, because it's great, the amount of information and authenticity. And sometimes they guide you towards places which reviews and guides online you might not get through these. So
very good. Well, let's move over a little bit to some issue which relates to climate resilience, and how can the tourism industry, in your opinion, build climate resilience, particularly in the coastal areas which are vulnerable to climate change?
Yes, definitely. We have a lot of legislation at EU level now when it comes to the Green Deal, the Fit for 55 package, environmental legislation, which asks every sector of the economy and every sector of transportation to also make huge developments with obligations there. And it's a huge package, but it's an important one. But apart from the legislation, I definitely wanted to mention, yes, what you asked, the aspect of climate resilience. We have legislation in place within the European Union, which is coming into effect, which will help in the long run, but we need to also look at how can we adapt our infrastructure at our ports, at our airports, our buildings when it comes to climate change effects, even how to prepare our workers. Will seasonality be affected? So let's speak of the Mediterranean region. I myself, as a tourist, when I go abroad in summer, I feel I must go towards an area where there is the sea, and ideally to an island, because I'm an islander and I'm used in summer to hang around and relax in near the sea. However, I've been experiencing in these past summers days off when I'll say, okay, today is a day off for me. I'll go to a beach in Malta as an internal tourism, or I go for a weekend in Sicily or some other Mediterranean island. But we've been experiencing heat waves, amongst other drastic climate change effects like forest fires and floods. And being in an area where I'm near the sea, but the temperatures are unbearable, how much can I really enjoy that area? And how is this affecting Mediterranean tourism? Usually tourists used to come to the Mediterranean, and they still do, to experience the pleasant weather, summer weather. But what is the impact that it's being left? We already saw some shift going to the north of Europe in summer. How will this affect a country like Malta, which is dependent on tourism, where we already are trying to diversify tourism during shoulder months, and we've been also tackling some aspects to attract tourism within winter months. Even in Gozo, there have been some incentives. But how can we relate to all of this? How are we going to make tourism destinations relevant and equipped? Because it's not only a question of summers becoming more heated and of preparing with more air conditioning, of preparing our outdoor areas in a way that would still be pleasant, but it's also a question of sometimes within a span of a week, even in Malta, within these last weeks, we have been experiencing dull weather, sunny weather, some wind, and I always need to keep my wardrobe equipped.
That's right.
So this is just a simple personal example, but it's having effects on tourism. And I wanted to share also from the strategy which the Maltese government has introduced within the pandemic period, but still relevant to this day, that we need to look, for example, quoting from the strategy, the importance of one key deliverable: investigate potential climate change impacts on Malta's coastal amenities, infrastructure, beaches, harbour facilities, residential and accommodation areas, historic towns, also the effect of climate change on our historical landmarks, water, boating facilities, and other areas. And they are also looking at the climate change tourism risk index. And I really believe, once again, going back to data, data is key. And we also need to assess in terms of data how the climate effects are impacting tourism within the Mediterranean, in Malta, Gozo, but also within the European Union as a whole. This is a challenge that we are experiencing, and within the last months, within the European Union, as a member of Parliament, I've been also organizing some debates when it comes to this important aspect. And we cannot not speak of climate resilience whilst not mentioning skills. We need skilling and education. If we do not have the necessary skills and education, we can have the best data, we can have the best legislation, but who is going to implement that, and who is going to reach the full potential of opportunities in this regard?
Yeah, could you mention maybe some what your thoughts are about some specific skills that tourism professionals need to develop in order to effectively tackle the challenges posed by climate change?
First of all, a very valid question. Sometimes I go to debates with tourism stakeholders, and I sometimes ask questions. For example, who in this room knows about the Fit for 55 package or about some particular legislation which is coming into effect? We have energy efficiency legislation coming into effect, which will also impact hoteliers, which will also impact hosts offering alternative accommodation, for example, within the tourism sphere. And sometimes I'm surprised that even though they are tourism stakeholders, they do not even know about some important aspects that are being discussed, being developed at EU level. We also have the transition pathway that the Commission launched, for example, which sought to involve stakeholders. We have the European tourism data space coming up. These are all very important aspects. And definitely, we need, first of all, to know what tools there are already available, what obligations are coming into effect, but also what opportunities, what EU funds are there. And there's also a Commission EU portal on important EU funding available, that if you go Google it online or go on some other search engine and search for it, it pops up. And it's important for our businesses and NGOs and our authorities to know about these available funds. So first, let's start about knowing what obligations and opportunities there are. Secondly, targeting more skills, more targeting skills when it comes to the green and digital transition. Recently, last week, I was attending and addressing the Malta Hotels and Restaurants Association event on hospitality, where we were speaking about a resilient, future-proof industry. And in this regard, we were also mentioning these aspects. And in one of the presentations, someone mentioned, for example, we speak about the importance of the English language, which is key. But tapping into alternative markets, even in other continents than the traditional ones, might require other skill sets, other language skills. But let me also mention here the importance of multilingual apps, which are already being developed around the world, where I could speak with someone who speaks, for example, Chinese, Japanese, through an app and communicate effectively. Let me do a side note here. I really believe in the power of languages. So when I'm going to a country, I try to make an effort to learn a few words in that language, because it really connects. When you go to a country, to a region, and you try speaking a few words in that language, I really believe it connects people very, very strongly. But in areas where we need to communicate and where there are different language skill sets, and where tourism could be still allowed and a positive touristic experience could be developed through these apps, let's also use technology. Let's use AI, let's use the metaverse and augmented reality to enhance tourism experience too. And may I hear, sorry, just one thing, Digital Decade Program, there is a report being issued. The first report has been issued also by the European Commission. It's a program I worked upon as a socialist negotiator. We also have 2030 digital targets, including when it comes to basic and more advanced skills for our employees and SMEs. Let's make an effort to reach these goals, not only as you know, because they are a target, they are an obligation, but also because we really believe that digitalization is within us, and there is also tourist expectation when it comes to eco-friendly options and digital options.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much huge developments that has been going on now for the last couple of years, which relates to what you call the artificial intelligence. It's a popular phrase to talk about AI all the time, but in reality, when you see how it actually works in practicality, it's quite amazing. I have some personal experience where I use this on regular basis, and I'm able to be understood in a language I don't speak, even though I take the time to use some apps like Duolingo to learn the basics of a language where I'm going. But I think these are good for kind of breaking the ice, and people will start to smile when they notice that you make an effort to say something in their language. But more important, that you can, when you have some difficulty or trouble, because on a holiday always something's happen, how can you get the help needed? And then when you have the right communication apps where you can actually talk in your own language and in a way that the other person understands exactly what you meant, those are so powerful tools these days which exist, that it's going to be a everyday tool that the people will be using, and they are becoming much more efficient as we speak. But one of the things which I'm interested in, the future trends that you already mentioned, and digitalization we talked about. How about the inclusion and making things that the experience is fair and open for everyone? So I'm very interested in the side of your comment about the inclusion.
Yes, this is very much important, and thank you for this question, because as a socialist, I have inclusive tourism at heart. And in this regard, I wanted to mention, for example, the importance that EU funds are tapped in to also have more accessible and more inclusive tourist experiences for persons with disabilities, for persons with mobility problems, brailles, being used even in historical landmarks or museums, so that people with eyesight problems could also have a good touristic experience, audio headphones, which could also help in this regard. These are all very much important. Accessibility when it comes to people using wheelchairs. Not all our historical places are yet accessible from a lot of different aspects. And we really must make sure and make an effort towards this. And let me here mention also, for example, how the metaverse could be used. So if metaverse is developed in a way which gives cultural, touristic tours in the pyramids of Egypt, for example, or some other historical landmarks, where someone with mobility issues could not go and visit, this would be a positive development too. And when we speak of inclusiveness, I must highlight the affordability aspect. It's true that it's important to develop niche tourism in different regions. And sometimes we should aim also at having quality and high-end experiences for tourists who are looking at luxury tourism, for example. But let's not forget then people with low budgets, which also have the right to travel around, the free movement, and are entitled to have a good touristic experience. So I really believe that when strategies are developed, it's important, first of all, to make them always inclusive for persons with disability and mobility issues, but then also to cater for different needs, to cater for those on low budget, and to cater for those seeking more high-end and luxury experiences. It's important to have also niche tourism and to target, to plan ahead, because otherwise it will be just one chaotic touristic experience. Trying to target everyone does not really work, in my opinion. But having different options for people with different budgets, with different abilities, with persons with disabilities is always important.
Very good. So, Josianne, this has been a very interesting discussion, and you've been really opening my eyes about many things that relates to Gozo, and also even looking at the bigger picture about your time in Brussels, where you were the representative of Malta. So I can hear through what you are saying. There's something that comes out of that time there. So I have just two more questions for you before we wrap up. One is, of course, I'm interested to know what is your next step now since you have returned from your mandate in Brussels.
Yes, till mid-July, I'll have my mandate because we have an overlap where it's meant as a handover and closing of political meetings. So I'll be back in Brussels again after the election till mid-July, and then my mandate stops. I'm really first looking forward to enjoy a bit the Gozo beaches and some time with family, loved ones, and friends. But I'm really looking forward also to what the future will bring with it. And one area I definitely would love and intend to continue working in is tourism and connectivity. Tourism connectivity when it comes to transportation, but also digitalization. I really loved working on these topics, and I developed some expertise and contacts in this regard in the last 5 years. And I really would love to bring this experience forward to my next step, definitely.
Well, I'm looking forward to see what that's going to be all about. That sounds very interesting. So if people want to find out more about your activities, how can they reach you? What platform or what email addresses, or is it LinkedIn, or where can they find you?
Yes, I'm active on LinkedIn and also on X, but a bit more on LinkedIn, and they can reach to me there in the messages, and we can connect, definitely. Anyone who would also have interesting discussions, ideas to bring forward. I always love sharing experiences and ideas on topics which are at heart. And sometimes I get really inspired by listening to others. It's great, even on a panel discussion. I get inspired sometimes with a point and I develop upon it by someone next to me. So please get in touch. Anyone who's interested to develop further ideas on areas we mentioned. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, but definitely LinkedIn and Instagram would be maybe more relevant to the audience here.
Okay, Josianne, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining today, this episode, and thank you very much for all your fantastic insight. So with this way, we will end this episode of the Social Hotelier, and I look forward to seeing you all again. And please remember to follow Josianne on Instagram, LinkedIn, and she's very active in all those platforms. So, and I'm sure she will appreciate your comments or feedback and the questions that you may have of these very important issues that we touched on this episode. So thank you very much, Josianne.
Thank you. Thank you to you, Sam-Erik. It's been a pleasure, and hope to see you somewhere around very soon, if not in Malta, within the EU or around the globe, and hope to see a lot of the viewers of this podcast too in Gozo and Malta and the near vicinity too.